Hey everyone, this is John the Machine Davis, and this is the Fans View podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fans View podcast. Today's guest is an absolute force in the world of power slap. He's hailing from Salem, Ohio. John has made his mark by becoming the inaugural power slap middleweight champion. He quickly earned a reputation for his power, intensity, and no-nonsense approach in the world of power slap. From a background in powerlifting and MMA training to standing across the platform from some of the fiercest competitors in the sport, John's journey has been anything but ordinary. Let's welcome to the show John the Machine Davis. John, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm very excited to have you on. You're in a sport that is very much talked about, but very little understood. I believe would be an accurate way to present it.
I absolutely agree with that statement.
Well, let's kind of jump into it, John. For those who, are just now getting to know you, maybe seeing you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about your background and then maybe how you first got involved with Power Slap?
Absolutely. I was getting into looking into the amateur MMA scene in the area, just locally, because I was gonna, chase the dragon of adventure and adrenaline through amateur MMA. And I stumbled across an ad saying slapping for money in some of the fight forums, and I was just kind of like, man, this is a load of shit. And then lo and behold, after I posted a comment or something, they were like, well, message me. And the next thing you know, exactly where I'm sitting right here, then I have a 60-page contract for, when we're going out to do the very beginning of this event, when they still weren't sure of a rule set. They still weren't sure about pretty much anything. We were all white knuckling it
Yeah.
and trying to figure out whether or not this was going to make it as a show and then as a sport. And obviously it's done both since then.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you getting into Power Slap, it was kind of like a happy accident then, just kind of browsing the forums?
I literally stumbled into it, and I know for a fact it was probably 2 to 3 days that I had said something to my wife that I was like, dude, what is this? I was like, what is this that I'm looking at? Because I'm just trying to find, local MMA around here. And I was like, it's in every single one. And then, of course, lo and behold, I turned out to be really fucking good at it.
That's an understatement. That's a perfect segue to my next question is, you've built a reputation for, your intensity and precision. Where does that mindset come from and how did the machine nickname kind of come to life?
The machine nickname actually came, again, you had mentioned the powerlifting that I was into for a couple of years. So we were doing, sets of whatever the one day, and instead of how normally, you're benching heavyweight, you're normally going to be dropping sets. I was actually doing more reps during those sets than I was at the beginning. So it kind of was, a bit asinine and ass backwards, as some would call it. And then someone's like, yeah, man, he's a machine. And of course, someone else in the group was like, yeah, he's the machine. And the next thing you know, they just started calling me machine. And, fast forward to Power Slap being like, what's your fight name? You got to have a fight name, because we really didn't have an
Right.
option that we had to have something. And I was like, well, other than, someone calling me an a-hole or a bunch of other profanity words, I was like, they call me the machine. So I'll go with that.
I love that. I kind of want to get into the nuts and bolts of power slaps. Like we said from the outset, people talk about it, not always in the most glorious light, but I feel like maybe a lot of that comes from ignorance about the sport. Like even me, I'm interested, but I don't understand it. So a lot of people, they see the viral knockouts. Obviously, you got the
Hmm.
Hawaiian just knocking people senseless. What are some of the technical elements, maybe, of power slap that fans might kind of overlook?
Our rules, there is a whole rule set of,
Right.
you have a window where your hand is supposed to land. It's not supposed to be up too high. It's not supposed to be down too low. It's supposed to be right here in the perfect window. Your feet are supposed to remain flat the whole time. You're not, you have minimal heel lift allowed. You're not supposed to be picking your heels up. Definitely no pivoting. You're not supposed to pivot because at that point, then we're just playing, punch down is what that sport would be called. You'd just be throwing punches instead of, an actual slap.
Right.
And then when it comes to the flinching part, if you what is it? If you move, so once they make contact, you're allowed to roll with it, but if they catch you rolling before contact is made, that is the beginning of what they will start calling for a flinch, which, old school rules. I don't know if you guys played by these rules when you were a kid, but two for flinching, dog. You flinch, you get
Yep.
another one. So I'll pass on that as much as I can, and I've had to deal with it, unfortunately.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Um, can you kind of, and I know some of this is kind of tongue in cheek, but can you walk us through maybe the strategy behind a slap? I mean, what role does like timing, targeting, even psychology, kind of play when you're standing up there, man to man?
Um, it all of it plays a big factor from even just as soon as you walk up. I will say when I first won the belt, because it's probably one of the cleanest strikes that I've thrown. I walk up to the podium, feet planted like you're about to do a deadlift or a squat. So I want to feel like my feet are roots in the ground. And from there, I'm making sure that, I have full mobility of my hips. I'm comfortable where I'm at. I found my placement. You have the opportunity to go on one, two, or three. You get to pick that. So you can, I mean, we all know what's going to happen. So I don't think there's much of a surprise. But I will say if you go on two or three, you can really drag those measures out, which is what, if you're one, two, that's your measure. But if you
Yeah.
make those long and drawn out, and then that third and final one, you just send it Babe Ruth style to the fences. It can definitely, I think, mentally mess with your opponent because they're counting now that our crowd is finally getting into it where they're doing the count along with you. So everybody's so invested and you can hear a pin
Yeah.
drop in this moment and then you just drop a bomb on someone, dude. It can definitely play a factor in a multitude of ways of, you want to make sure you're comfortable and you want your opponent to realize that this is about to suck before it even happens.
I love that explanation, and I love how passionate you got when you're talking about just dropping bombs. I love that.
Thank you.
Um, can you talk to us a little bit maybe about the training? Like what specifically can you do to uh deliver a more powerful, a better slap, if you will, and what can you do training wise, to try to absorb a slap?
First, before the power comes, you have to have the technicality and the precision because if you're pivoting, if you're missing where your hand is landing, you're going to lose. You're going to beat yourself by the rule set compared to just beating your opponent. So, throwing thousands of slaps, going over, watching video footage of yourself to see how your body moves to make sure you're not committing fouls. That's where I would start. And then, you can do band work, you can do even with weights, the full motion that your body is going to be making with a complete strike. So that way, all those muscles are activated because you're using your core, you're using your back, you're driving power from one side with one leg into the other, and then trying to drag it all the way through for a finish and hopefully a knockout. Um, when it comes to the strength stuff, I think it just it's a balance of strength and speed. But again, it all goes back to, can you be precise? Because without that precision, your strength and your speed mean jack shit, because it goes out the window when you smack someone in the temple and you get called for it. So,
Right.
really honing in, and again, watching to see where, if you throw 20 slaps and 15 out of 20 are in the right spot, but those 5 that you missed, you need to figure out why, you need to figure out how, and you need to figure out how you're going to fix that and keep it from happening.
Yeah, and as you said that, John, it kind of made me think of like pitchers. Obviously, I was a baseball player in high school. You always see pitchers doing the band work, and that's like the biggest part of their program. So that definitely makes sense. Would you say, something else that you made me think of during that explanation? Do you think it's more about power or explosiveness? When you're delivering a slap, in your opinion?
Oh man, I would I would say it depends on the person, only
Mhm.
because there are people with slower speed, but because of how strong they are, they're hitting you with a cinder block. And then there's
Yeah.
people who aren't nearly as, physically strong when it comes to putting up numbers on whatever workout you would have, but their speed and their whip is insane. So it gives them a super big edge to be able to, again, they catch you off guard, because even though you're going to get hit, you don't expect, a fucking bald eagle coming in and hitting you in the face as fast as that,
Right.
as what
Right.
actually happens to you.
Right. Yeah. You don't expect to get on you so fast.
Yes.
And that kind of lends itself to this. In Power Slap, it seems like obviously there's a huge focus on your chin strength. Do you have a glass jaw? Do you have, you know what I mean, and your tolerance? Is there any way to train to take a hit like that, or is it kind of just like you're either born with it or you're not?
I'm gonna say you can train for it, but both apply, because if you're not crazy enough to have probably already been hit and know that you can take a hit, it's really risky to go up there and find out like that.
Yeah,
But you
for
can
sure.
train, there's the jawzrsize that people have that you chew on that helps strengthen your jaw muscles. Like the iron neck is the same thing, where you can do band work or like the cable work, so that way you're strengthening your neck muscles and everything up top. But also training, I know for the most part, and I think they still do it this way for the training they have going on down there. They'll use a pool noodle. So you have, your teammate, whoever you're working with, hold a pool noodle and they hit you with it, so that way you're used to someone swinging at you to eliminate the flinching effect. But also,
Right.
if you are going to try and roll with it, then you can get the timing of you're being hit and you want to figure out, are you going to go with it? I've seen people lean down into it. That causes a problem, because you can get a flinching foul. You end up hurting your opponent because you're moving and you're not
Right.
supposed to. It's definitely, like you were saying, there's a lot more to it than what people really may think.
Well, for sure. For sure. If and there's a lot of them, so I mean, it might be hard to pick out one, but if there was one misconception about power slap athletes that you could clear up, what would that misconception be?
That we're not athletes. People, oh, well, I could just get
Yes.
up off the couch and do that. Yeah, people can get up off the couch and go do anything. But if you want to be successful at this and you want to do it at the
Yes.
highest level possible, you have to be training for it, because if not, you're going to go up there and you're going to find out real fast that, yeah, your off the couch mindset sounded good and it's all fun and games, until you get up there and realize that it's not a game and you're about to get, probably knocked out, and hopefully not
Yeah.
too damaged, because you thought, oh, hey, this is, we're not playing patty cake up there. We're really trying to screw each other up, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the name
Hey,
of the
you.
game.
Yeah, watching this right now. I see you. If you're enjoying what you're watching, I've got one quick favor to ask, and it only takes a second, costs you nothing, and makes a huge difference. If you could go ahead and hit that like button, maybe drop a comment. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Doesn't seem like much, but for small creators, it's everything. So let's help more people find this channel and keep the content coming. And honestly, I'm pretty sure the podcast will be really grateful. So if you're having fun, you like what you see, make it official, click those buttons, and the Fans View podcast, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, that's the name of the game, right?
Exactly.
Breaking necks and cashing checks.
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to hit on before we kind of pivot away from Power Slap. You've obviously, you've gotten a lot of recognition with Dana attaching his name to it. I would say Power Slap really got a shot in the arm, when Paige Van Zant joined in. Obviously, you guys have a lot of homegrown talent. How big of a deal was it in your eyes when a name like, PVZ with all that UFC experience and stuff, and just the brand name kind of joins the outfit? Did you guys see a bump from that, and how did you guys feel about her joining the promotion? Excuse me.
Me personally, when it came to her joining, I thought it was great. A, I knew she had a big following already. B, it was cool because she's done multiple sports, UFC, bare knuckle, boxing. So it was someone who the fans had no chance to take away anything that she's done as a professional athlete already. And then, watch her be able to flourish in this and, hopefully be able to get her title shot one day. I think it was the equivalent of when Dumpling finally got here, when the crazy Hawaiian finally got his, paperwork squared away to be part of this. Cause I know in the very beginning, he wasn't able to, neither was Dumpling. And, even a couple of other guys who had done smaller stuff, who had a smaller following, them coming in, like Ron and Darius at the very beginning for the first heavyweight belt. Those guys coming from Slap Fight Championship and having, a 27 round war that I'm sure, had millions of views all over the place. And now they're on this stage that's promoted by Dana. All of them in general like that. And, anyone who pretty much has already had a combat sports background, because there are more people coming in now. They have a lot of wrestlers too with smaller followings. I think it was helpful, and but I also think no matter what, with or without these people, we were on a trajectory that was shooting to the moon anyhow, because I know from Power Slap 1, I walked off the stage, and at that point in time, they had TVs around that you could see how many viewers were there. And this was on Rumble, so it was even, a little bit harder for people to find, but it was like 1.3 to 1.8, 1.5, 1.8, 1.2. It was over 1 million the entire time I was on the stage for that very first event.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, it's funny you say that with professional wrestlers. Obviously, I have a lot of wrestlers on the podcast. And as we record this on June 27th, I believe tonight is actually the debut of Hollywood Haley J.
Maybe, I'm not too sure. There's so many of them, and I've been really busy because I'm taking on a new position at work and trying to be ready for other stuff. So I haven't paid that much attention to it, because unless they call, I've kind of had to reel it in a little bit with my Power Slap obsession.
I completely understand and appreciate that. Well, let's talk about something other than Power Slap. Obviously, it got announced here this week, I believe. You've got an MMA fight coming up. What inspired that move?
Yes,
I know you
sir.
talked about, you kind of want to get into MMA even before Power Slap. But was this always the long-term plan to try to pivot back to MMA?
Yeah, and it's not even just MMA. It's such a big world of combat sports. And, I'm not scared to learn, and I'm not scared to try. Obviously, if people haven't figured that out yet, then you need to go look at my Power Slap career a little more closely, I would gladly do a bunch of different stuff, but just being inactive in Power Slap recently and having nothing to I guess that's the only way I can having nothing to work towards is very frustrating for me. So
Yeah.
Connecting with American Fight Promotions, because I actually, it's a small world. I knew a couple of people who were already there and a part of it, my agent and some other folks that were all connected. It just so happened that, a month or two ago, I went to an event that they asked me to come to. They gave me a ticket. It was greatly appreciated. It was a great event. And then of course watching it was really a reminder of like you were saying, was it the plan to pivot back, back to MMA or anything? It was a plan to actually be doing all of it at once, but Power Slap just took off so fast at
Yeah.
once that it pretty much just it held the reins of what my, competitive career was for almost 2 years.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. How do you feel like your power slap experience now is going to translate into the cage? Is there kind of a mental or physical edge you feel like maybe you're bringing over?
The mental edge, I would say I'm gonna have over most anybody. I mean, no offense to anyone out there, even professional fighters at the regional level. I've competed in Abu Dhabi and in Las Vegas at two of the biggest name promotion areas. Like, I've had millions of people watching me live, thousands of people in seat watching me. The biggest promoter on top of the UFC fighting, UFC fighters from new folks all the way up to champions. And then again, there's the list goes on for celebrities and streamers and all of these people who I think a lot of folks would get in front of and probably be very worried. I get up on that podium and I like, no, again, no offense, I could give a shit less who's out there. I've competed in Power Slap when there was nobody there. You could literally turn and go, "Hey Dana, how's it going?" And he would look up and be like, "You guys are doing great," compared to now where one person gets hit and the entire area is just freaking out. So I would say mentally I have an edge in the aspect of I've competed in, you know, huge crowds live and streaming, and I don't really think about that during that point in time, which I'm sure some folks would probably crumble underneath that pressure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot. Give us a preview. What can we expect when you step in that cage?
Oh man, I'm just excited to be active again. Again, like you were saying, getting back to my roots of, I wrestled in high school, so grappling was always a natural thing for me to kind of get into. And then, just training all of it around so that way I can go. I mean, obviously I want a first round finish. I don't want to go to a decision. I want a first round finish. That would be great. Go out there if they give me a mic to, say some crazy stuff. And then also let all these, bigger promotions know that, like, hey, I'm not just a power slap person. I can do other stuff. I am an athlete and I would gladly come out here and fight, whoever they put up against me.
I love that, and obviously I know what the answer to the question is going to be, but is something on the bucket list maybe to become the first guy to transfer from Power Slap over to the UFC?
If it was possible, I would love to say yes. I'm a realist, and I know right now I'm probably not UFC level, but I've given myself until I'm 40. I'm about to be, I'll be 33. I got to think here. 2 days before this fight actually happens, so I've got 7 more years left of competing until, I've given myself till I'm 40 to be doing combat sports. So if my body feels good then and I can still do it, awesome. If not, then that'll be about the time I'm ready to, close the chapter of competition, at least on certain things, and then kind of, go from there.
Love that. Well, to kind of start to round this thing out, John, I love to ask everyone the same final two questions. One being, this is the Fans View podcast. I have to ask you, outside of competition, what are you a fan of?
Um, you know, there's really pretty much just making the home life to the best of my capabilities. Um, I love to work out, so a lot of what I really love to do is correlated with sports and competing. So that's the biggest thing I think when it comes to stepping away from it is, whatever I like to do is definitely intense stuff. But I will tell you this much. I had a surreal moment yesterday weed whacking by the garden in my backyard. And it was probably, mowing and weed whacking, just taking care of my house and my property is probably my biggest hobby and what I'm a fan of.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, this is my last question. This is my favorite question. At this point, like you said, you're a young man still in this fight game, especially. At this stage, not only of your career, but of your life, what does success mean to you?
Success to me is making sure that everyone in my home is taken care of and that I've done the best of my ability to give them a life that, me and my wife may have never had and give them the knowledge to hopefully make better decisions than I did.
I love that. I really respect that, and I appreciate that answer. Well, John, I want to thank you so
Thank you.
much, man, for coming on the show. This has been so much fun. And hopefully people kind of start to get an idea of what Power Slap really is. Where can people get at you on social media? And how about your fight coming up? Is there anywhere to watch it? Where can we check this stuff out?
Yes, so I'll start with all my social media is John the Machine Davis, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, even X. But it'll be American Fight Promotion. I'll be posting ticket links for anyone who's from Ohio who's interested in going. But about 2 weeks out from the actual event, they should have a pay-per-view for, again, the American Fight Promotions. So once I get that posted, if everyone who's interested, go ahead, let them know that I sent you because it would be crazy for, an amateur debut to have more pay-per-views than probably the people who were headlining it.
I love that so much. And when can we expect to see you back on the Power Slap podium? Are there any plans, any ideas kind of in the works, anything?
Man, I I got nothing for it. I wish I had something that I could even allude to, but I have nothing. I know whenever they
Okay.
call, I'll be ready, especially right now. Getting ready for something else will definitely help me when the MMA fight's over. If they call me before or after, it's good because physically I feel good, mentally I feel good. I just hope they call so that way I can go back up there and get my damn belt back.
So safe to say we have not seen the last of the machine in Power Slap.
Absolutely not.
All right, John. Well, we're going to let you go, brother. Thank you again for giving up so much of your time. We appreciate you here on the Fans View podcast. Guys, make sure to go give him a follow, John the Machine Davis. Go check out that pay-per-view, show him some love. And don't forget, guys, most importantly, don't forget to call your mom.
If you haven't liked or subscribed, you're going to be joking me.